so important to understand the difference, because so many different denominations don't understand the difference between the temporal relationship with God, or the parental and the eternal. And so they mix all that up and tend to avoid the discussion of the fear of the Lord, and therefore don't understand when it's brought up. They don't understand the word respect. They don't understand a lot of things, and so they tend to either avoid it or deny it, or try to twist it and turn it in such a way that doesn't scare them or offends them in some way or another. And so we were talking about it because when the concept of fear that's brought up, that we'll continue to look at tonight, of course, is in the context of, for us, is in the context of a parental fear, where God is a parent of our spirit, as we'll remind ourselves later and look at. And because he made us new creations and made our spirits new and children, he is obligated to parent us. And he's not a deadbeat dad. He does do a good job, and he's committed to it. And so that's why the concept of fear is there, because if a kid has an active father, he will be afraid to disobey. If a kid doesn't, he won't. And so, because dad's not there. And God is ever present, always active, and says that his commitment to us in Hebrews 12, which we've looked at, is of course to the disciplinary process. And the disciplinary process, if you'll remember, the word discipline means what? Training. The word discipline means training. It does not mean spanking. Scourging means spanking. The rod means spanking. Those things are talked about. Spankings are talked about. And they have a different purpose, or a complementary purpose. But so he uses the word scourging in Hebrews, or the rod in Proverbs, or something like that. But the word discipline is the word training, and that comes through the Word of God. It comes through trials. It comes through wisdom being given. It comes through the encouragement of others. It comes through a lot of means, different ways. But the training comes basically, as I said, through you having to repeat a certain trial until you're successful through it, in the same way that we would work a job or play a sport or anything. And so the fear of the Lord, though, as we looked at last time, we'll continue to remind ourselves. Look at Proverbs again. And we'll just pick up kind of where we left off. I think we left off in 16:6. So maybe we'll read that one and move forward from there. He says, by loving kindness and truth, iniquity is atoned for. And by the fear of the Lord, one keeps away from evil. And we talked about this before. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and knowledge, right? Chapter 1, verse 7, chapter 9, he says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. In chapter 1, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Chapter 9. We've heard these things quoted throughout the years. And that's because fear stops you from doing something foolish or dumb or whatever, right? And then if you are stopped, you'll be like, okay, well, how do I accomplish it? So fear will stop you long enough to gain knowledge, and thus then be successful and have no more fear. And so you see kids all the time, they do something dumb, and they're like, oh, I hurt myself, I did this didn't work out so well. You're like, yeah, and now guess what? They're afraid. They're afraid to do it again. And they come to mom or dad and say, how do I accomplish this without getting hurt again? It's like, okay, now the fear of riding a bike, the fear of this now is the beginning of the knowledge of how to ride a bike, right? The fear of doing something, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, because if you fear messing up and getting burnt by it, you're going to seek knowledge, you're going to seek wisdom, and you're going to gain it. And thus you're not going to have the tragedies. You can learn everything the hard way, which can kill you, can maim you. You can lose fingers, right? There's all kinds of ways to learn the hard way, or you can simply read a book on it, right? Remember, scientists used to learn the hard way. Everything's the hard way. Let's put these two metals together and see what happens. It blows up. Remember the Muppets? There was Beaker, and he was like, there was the professor, and then there was the scientist, and there was Beaker. And he's like, here, Beaker, put these two together. And he would like hide behind the thing. Beaker, He always blew up on Beaker. He was the test subject. And it's a play on the reality that a lot of great minds died. And the people watching would go, don't do that. Don't put those two metals together. They kill you, you blow up the whole factory. So you can learn the hard way, or you can learn the easy way just by reading it and gaining knowledge. And so people tend to go headlong into something thinking, I got this. Yeah, Jesus said this, whatever. Okay, got it. I'll just figure it out. And then, something happens, they come back wounded. And the Lord, what happened? I thought I was going, and you said you blessed me. And then they're like, oh, now I've got to slow down, stop. I fear messing up. I fear the Lord not blessing this. I fear the Lord disciplining me. Therefore, now I'm going to stop and gain knowledge. So the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge and wisdom, as the fear of anything is the beginning of knowledge and wisdom for that thing. And if someone doesn't have a fear of their parent, or a healthy, it's like if you don't have a healthy fear of, say, respect for, but the word respect is the word fear. It's from phobos. If you don't have a respect for fire, what generally happens?
You get burned.
You get burned. You don't have a respect for electricity, you get shocked, right? If you don't have a respect for dangerous animals, right, you get eaten. Something bad happens. Even people who think, that I'm a lion, I'm a trainer, I know what I'm doing, I've known this animal forever. Next thing you know, newspaper, trainer is eaten by their animal they've known for 15 years. Yeah, you thought, but then you put yourself in that compromised situation, or the orcas or whatever it is, that everybody's an expert until their lunch, right? Yep, I guess you learned the hard way on that one. It's tragic, but it's just an age-old thing. It's like when you start getting arrogant and start assuming you know what you're doing, and you push it too far, and then something bad's going to happen because you're dealing with powers and situations that you really don't know and don't understand. And so, especially when it comes to living things.
Sketchy turning into dumb real quick,
What is it?
So sketchy turning into dumb real quick.
Yeah, sketchy turning into dumb. Like, oh, this was sketchy. Oh, now it's dumb. Now I'm dead. So, chapter 19, verse 23. It says, the fear of the Lord leads to life, so that one may sleep satisfied, untouched by evil. It does. When you're walking with the Lord and you're doing it accurately, when you're walking peacefully, you're walking wise enough not to run headlong into trouble. God says that He never puts a trial on us that's too big to handle. Never. He's never put a trial on anybody too big for them to handle, and He's given them the grace to deal with it according to the situation. Even in Job's situation, which was unique. But we're in the new covenant, so it's a whole different ball game of grace and compassion. And what happens is often we find ourselves in a trial, and then we step too deep into it. And it's not that God put me in that; I put me in that. And so if I find myself in a situation that's running over me, it's usually because I put myself in that situation. It wasn't what God put you in. If you take a trial that God has presented and then you push past that, then you can get injured. Now, He's holding our hand, as Psalm 37 says, and you won't fall headlong, but you can surely skin up those knees and elbows, right? You can certainly cause harm to yourself if you put yourself in situations running too fast into something, and rather than being careful, investigating, relaxing, finding knowledge, seeking understanding, and then walking carefully into something and some ambition, some hobby, some anything, right? That you're in. If you do, obviously, you're going to have a smoother transition in that occasion, and evil isn't going to touch you, right? He says in Peter that Satan's a roaring lion seeking someone to devour, but he says resist him and he'll flee from you, right? But what if you don't resist him because you think you've got it handled, and now you get pulled into evil in some way, and then you have to kind of back your way out. So we can harm ourselves, and God will still save us from it ultimately. But it's these statements are true, and a lot of times they say, well, I've been in situations where, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, you probably, if we were to investigate the details, right? Every time I've ever investigated the details, when somebody's got kind of an accusation against God for not being faithful, anytime I've investigated the details, there's always that sheepish moment that happens. Well, yeah, I did do that. And okay, so you did it to yourself. And God saved you out of it. So don't complain so much, that you did it to yourself. But so look at Proverbs 22:4. We're just kind of skimming the surface of these texts that talk about the fear of the Lord. It says, the reward of humility and the fear of the Lord are riches, honor, and life. Now, there's an interesting point about humility in this text you have to understand. Humility is not self-abasement. It's certainly not the stuff you see today in many religious circles. All this, I'm unworthy, and all this nonsense. It's nonsense. Of course I'm worthy. I'm a child of God. He says I'm worthy. It's not about that. Humility is directly related to authority. Self-abasement is related to pride. And so if I abase myself in a way that's not true, then I'm being proud. Humility is always based upon the truth of a situation that is authoritative or is exalted. Some authority or some reality of exaltation. And if I respond proper to authority, then I am being a humble person. It is proud to pretend to be equal to an authority or an authority over someone when I'm not an authority over them, or an authority over the authority. That is the technical definition of pride, or the absence of humility. Humility is a technical reality attached to or based to authority, or the truth of something that is established. So if I say 2 + 2 is 4, that's me being humble, because that's reality, right? I'm addressing a truth base. If I say 2 + 2 is 5, I'm being proud, because I'm saying that my subjective contemplations are true, even though they have no foundation. That's an authority, right? Math being an authority. If I'm working for someone and I'm treating them as if we're equals, that is proud. If I'm seeking to be an extension of their will in the context of which I've agreed to sell my flesh to them for those 9 hours or 8 hours, then I'm being humble. It's a technicality. Humble isn't being, That's being weak, mostly. Humble is when you're technically subjecting to authority. You can do that with strength, with vitality, with confidence. And so you have to be careful not to be abasey, which in Colossians says that self-abasement is no value, right? But people love it. It says, in fact, false teachers delight in self-abasement. The same word in the Greek is humility. They translate it self-abasement because that's what it means, but that's what they're trying to explain. But the word is just the word humility. They delight in humility, as if they're applying humility in times where humility does not apply. And when you do that, it's pride. When you apply humility in its context where if you're a leader, if I'm a husband and I'm leading my wife, and I apply myself to be humble underneath her, I'm now proud before God because God's put me in a position of authority. In the same way, if I'm in a company and I am hired by the company to be a boss over people, and I follow the people's will rather than the boss's will, I am now proud. It looks humble to the people, but technically it's proud because I'm saying I'm not going to subject myself to my authority. Rather, I'm going to humble myself before the people I'm supposed to be leading. This is technically proud. Now, you'll feel humble, but you're really being arrogant and proud. And that's the condition of our world today. People love to feel humble, but really they're just arrogant and proud because they're not subjecting themselves to the actual authority that they're actually under. And the same is true. A man is under Christ, right? And therefore he subjects himself to Christ, and therefore leads on the basis of Christ's administration, not on the basis of the will of his children. Otherwise, you would just eat ice cream all the time, right? Or cookies or something like that. You can't lead on the basis of someone's will. You have to lead on the basis of the wisdom of what is necessary to help or to do good or to bring health or to bring the proper support to the people around you, even if they don't like it. A good leader can corral the people. Yes, there's art, form, and skill and being a strong leader and still gaining the favor of the people. But you'll never do that being weak. You'll never do it by abasing or acting humble because people, they don't buy it. Once you do that, then everybody thinks that you should follow their will, and then it just becomes chaotic. And the whole thing breaks down. That's why he says in this text, the reward of humility and the fear of the Lord. Those two go together because true humility is attached to proper understanding of God's authoritative structure, and therefore the result will be from God, as he says, and these are technicalities: riches, honor, and life. Riches, honor, and life. Because if you're a useful, helpful part of any company, you'll get promoted. You don't have to be there the longest for people to go, this person knows how to peacefully follow my instruction, to carry out the ambitions of the company that he has working for. He's not disruptive, mouthy, attitude-ish. That's the person who's going to get promoted, as opposed to the person who has more tenure. Because who wants to work with a person who thinks that their way is the way it all should go, and they're always fighting against the leadership? Those people tend to get pushed off into some corner. So it's true, just on a basic human level, but from God's oversight, he makes sure a person gains riches, honor, and life through that situation. And it's true. I've seen it over and over and over. Chapter 23, verse 17. Do not let your heart envy sinners, but live in the fear of the Lord always. It's easy when a situation comes along. Somebody's got something you want, or they got an advancement, or your friends are getting married, or whatever, right? And you start thinking maybe to make compromises. It says, don't do that, right? Don't let your heart envy sinners, but live in the fear of the Lord always. You have 24:21. My son, fear the Lord and the king. Do not associate with those who are given to change. Again, it's kind of like the progressivism of our day, as it has always been. When someone starts seeking change for the sake of change, then they start compromising truth, even to the, of course, absurdity and insanity of when the previous president was in and people were saying 2 + 2 is 5. Remember that? Yeah. It wasn't too long ago.
Math is rigged.
Yeah. A man can have a period. I mean, all these absolute absurdities that are laughable, and doctors and scientists, and that were all controlled by the liberal machine, were refusing to admit that a man couldn't have a baby. It's like, oh, the world we live in. Huh?
You're the birthing person.
Yeah, the birthing person.
You're a birthing person of a birthing.
Yeah, apparently. So the absurdity, it's like, that's how far it can go. I mean, we looked at it. If we, even 10 years ago, said, yeah, in 7 years, we're going to be in this crisis of whether 2 + 2 is 4 and whether men can have babies, you'd went, nah, we're not going to be in the crisis. That's stupid. Ha, 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 that's funny. Nope, we actually were in the crisis of insanity. As they say, the mental patients took over the asylum. Yeah. So the fear of the Lord is, of course, mentioned so many times, right? Over and over and over and over and over. And that's because, again, he is our parent. Now go back to Hebrews. We've been going back there over and over and over because it's important to... I'll tell you what, before we do that, we'll do it a little backwards. That'll be fun. Look at, let's go to Ephesians. It'll be fine. This goes to, or speaks to the reality in the new covenant. If you'll remember, we have been transferred in this book, even out of the dominion of darkness into the kingdom of his Son, and his Son's kingdom is in the household of God. So we were in a dominion that could manifest itself in many ways, right? Satan's dominion, you can be a Satan worshiper and sacrifice humans, or you can be the leader of a church, and it doesn't matter, right? You can be as moral as you want, just don't accurately teach the truth about Christ, and that's fine. And Jesus spoke to those, that many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, we did this, we did that, and they'll say, I never knew you. And then you have those who are dark, dark, dark people. And then there's everything in between, just the good old boy and the normal person in the world. And so the dominion of darkness, everybody's born into it. Where you're born into it is, inconvenient sometimes. If you're born into the dark side or the hyper-religious side, it's pretty hard to dig your way out of those sometimes. But nonetheless, you're born into this dominion, and you at some point come to a knowledge of God, understand Christ, and then you believe. And when you believe, you die with Christ. Your spirit that your mother and your father birthed is taken out, your heart's taken out, your mind's taken out, and spiritually, and God replaces them. Boom, 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 boom. They're all new creations. And so now you're this new man, this new person, this brand new baby child of God. And that through that act, you're eternally transferred out of the dominion of darkness. And it's a domain because there are many different kinds of authority in Satan's dominion. And you're transferred to a kingdom, which is only one kind of authority, right? You go from a dominion to a kingdom. And in that kingdom, which is in God's household, his children are all now a child kingdom. And you're transferred into that. And the problem is we bring our baggage that's left over, because even though our spirits are made new or new creations, our flesh is still the leftover from our previous life. And our habits and the things that we've seen and the things that we've studied and the habits that we've had, or the religious habits or the fleshly habits, all that's brought in to this new household. And God says, now I want you to turn that around. I want you to separate yourself from your former life's holiness, separation, and I want you to walk in the new life that you have, right? You're this new creation. You have this new life. I want you to learn, like a baby longing for pure milk, to grow in respect to your salvation by walking that new life that you have now. And so because you're in a different house, and that house is under the kingdom of Christ. And so that's the reality of our situation. We are the children of God spiritually, but in the flesh we're still called bondservants. That's why when you see Paul call himself a bondservant, it's in respect to his apostleship. His apostleship is connected to his flesh. Paul is no longer an apostle of Jesus Christ. He's dead, right? He's just a child of God in heaven. His name will be memorialized as being one of the 12 apostles of the Lamb, but at this time he's no longer an apostle. He finished that. That was connected to his flesh. And so once his flesh is gone, which he calls a bondservant, because it's a purchased possession rather than a new creation, then he's no longer that anymore. And so the bondservant side of me is the part that I have to learn to present differently than it formerly lived. And it still has all the same habits and all the same thinking and all the same ideas and all the same emotional responses to certain situations, all still embedded into it. And so my goal is, as a priest, is to present this body as a sacrifice. Romans 12:1, present it back to God is my spiritual service of worship, present it living and holy, something that it is not. It is a dead body, a body of sin, and is not holy in itself, but I'm supposed to present it as if it is holy. I'm supposed to present my body as if it's already made new when it's not made new. Why? Because inside of me is made new, thus proving that the inside is in fact new. And so that's ultimately it. So now, because you're in this household, and you're adopted into the family of God. And by the way, the adoption is not just a legal transaction, though there is a legal aspect to it. The legal aspect to it earlier in this book, as we all know, is through being a new creation. You're God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works. You were raised up with Him and seated with Him, right? You were made a new creation, prepared for good works. And so that's chapter 2, verses 6 through 10. And you're in God's household. Your spiritual household is chapter 2, verse 11 through the end of the book talks about, right? So we know that. And now we're in chapter 5, and he's talking about walking in wisdom, making the most of your time, starting in verse 15 of Ephesians. Because he's using walk as his guide here. And the last walk is in 15, where he says, therefore be careful how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of your time, because the days are evil. So then do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And do not be drunk with wine, which is dissipation, but be filled, it says, in spirit. That's not talking about the Holy Spirit. That's talking about your spirit. They translate it big S, but it's not what it is. Your spirit is speaking to one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody with your heart to the Lord, always giving thanks for all things in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ to God, particularly the Father. And then he says, and be subject to one another in the fear of Christ. Like, oh, okay, so why would I fear Christ? Why would I fear him? Well, I'm in his kingdom, right? So on the one hand, as we're going to see at the end of this discussion, we have God as our Father, and God as our Father is going to discipline us, and he's going to even scourge us if need be, because he's going to do what's best, and he's committed to that process. God is committed to the process of making sure that I am going to consistently walk in support of his Son, because that's why I'm left here. God wants to do that because he values, as we've said, he values your spiritual maturity more than your earthly success. Your spiritual maturity is an eternal investment that when you see God, you will run up to him and grab him and say, thank you that you valued my spiritual maturity, because I see the value of it now. It will eternally benefit me. Whereas down here, we value, our emotions value our temporal success and the things that we get. There you will, I guarantee you, run up to him and thank him for the fact that he valued your eternal maturity, because that depth will carry with you. And as I said, it's if Jesus said himself, those whom are forgiven much love much, those who are forgiven little love little. The more you grow, the more you understand your need for maturity, the more you understand your forgiveness. It's not that some people are forgiven less and some people are forgiven more. Everybody has depths of sin that are tremendous. But some people never come to understand that through self-awareness because they're not growing at the level they need to. And so they see themselves as better really than other people. And you can become better through maturity. But if you think you're better because of your social training, that's where you're deceived, right? If it's spiritual maturity, it's because it came from first reading the Word of God, understanding how your social training, though may be lovely to the society, is technically based on a faulty foundation of thinking. And then you evaluate that, and then you reapply yourself, maybe with the same behavior, but with a different mindset behind it, and then it becomes spiritual. And now it becomes rewardable, it becomes real, and it becomes something that you can relate to God on rather than just an instinct of how to behave. Sort of the Emily Post upbringing, right? Just good manners and yes and bow and kiss this and shake babies and kiss hands and all that stuff that you do.
Shake babies.
I always wonder, sometimes people don't get that. It goes right over their head.
I don't think you'd be re-invited.
I wouldn't be a very good politician, would I?
Can you give some examples of like, what did you say, social training versus true spiritual training?
Okay.
I mean, the social training I understand, but what about the opposite of what you're saying?
Social training okay. Let's talk about something as simple as birthdays, right? Because that's something we all understand. If you want to love someone, right? And you think, I want to love them, therefore, I'm going to throw them a birthday party. And then you force them to participate in this. Do you like this color? Do you want this cake? You can see it's just annoying the person because they don't really care that much, right? But it's really you getting the satisfaction of it. They're not really caring either way. Just make me a party, whatever. I'll come, right? And then you get your feelings hurt. You don't really care all the work I put into this, and oh my goodness, and look at all that I'm doing. How did my birthday turn into like an occasion to curse me? Because I'm not living up to the expectation of you throwing a party for me, right? In other words, social training, how mean of that person for not, cooperate. I can't believe how ungrateful they are that you're putting a birthday party on for them. It's like, I don't care if I have a birthday party or not. I don't care if anybody knows my birthday is happening or not. Like, how am I now this evil, mean, insensitive, proud, person for, not becoming imprisoned into this event now? You just see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that's how twisted our society can get. I don't know. You ever seen that movie Meet Joe Black?
Oh yeah.
That was a theme in that movie. It kind of comes to mind where he's going to die and death is going to get him eventually, and he wants to hang around and experience life, right? Death does, and in the meantime, there's this side thing of the daughter, his oldest daughter is throwing him a birthday party, and it comes to mind. That's an illustration of it, yeah, where he doesn't really care that much and doesn't care about being around large crowds and whatnot. But to her, she wants to honor him, and finally he has to give in because she just totally breaks, down. And he's like, no, I've got to act like I'm really into this. And so he loves his oldest daughter, like, oh yes, this one's great, this cake and whatever. And but in that scene, what you're seeing is the hypocrisy of love, right? Love without hypocrisy, Romans 12:9. And so if I love without hypocrisy means if I'm going to love, I need to customize my love so that you are blessed, but whether I'm blessed or not. I do not have to be blessed in order for you to be blessed in love. You don't even have to know that I loved you, right? In other words, if I'm going to customize my love around loving you, not my version of how you should receive my love. right? The world says you have to receive my love the way I say you should, and all my girlfriends or my husband or whatever agree with me, you know, and whatever. And so we're all definitely right since our hive mind says we are, and therefore you have to play this game, as opposed to Romans 12:9, which says let love be without hypocrisy. In the Greek it says love without hypocrisy. And hypocrisy is when I add, like, I'd like to take you out to buy you a cake for your birthday so that we can eat it. It's like you're saying, I want to be satisfied by the gift I give you. I want to make sure I am gaining some kind of happiness from it. So there's a social aspect to it, right?
And that's with hypocrisy?
That's with hypocrisy, because you're saying, if I say, well, you know, I don't really want to do that or whatever, people get their feelings hurt, right? You know, because you know, in their mind, you're doing some great sacrifice, or you're spending this money or something. Oh, you're not grateful. It's like, it's not about being grateful. It's just about whether they just want to do it or not, you know. And so those are ways where society will say, this is how you love, right? And I always use the grandma for Christmas knitting a sweater illustration, because I think of my grandmother. My grandmother, for our wedding, knitted us a comforter for our bed. And that was so sweet. Of course, it never went on the bed a day, because it was like, and it was lovely. It was a comforter, and she knitted it, and it had like people dancing on it. And it was like, yeah, like ballroom dancing. Like, I've never ballroom danced a day in my life. I don't even know how to do that. If they had somebody break dancing on it, then I could do it back in the 80s, right? But you know, I have no idea. So it was great, you know. Thank you. I don't think we ever used it for anything. Of course, it just stayed in a locker, and you just keep it there. But in her mind, she was loving us. But did she accomplish love? Right? She didn't accomplish love, because it was something we never used, and it actually became an encumbrance where I have to move it around with us everywhere we go, and it's a memory of her love that was never accomplished, right? And so it's like she knit me a sweater. It's like, oh, that's great. It's not my color. It's not what I want. It doesn't even fit right. But hey, I love. If there was I think you look so good in this color, right? Not do you like this color, but I think you look good in this. So they're gaining the satisfaction. The one you're not giving, when you're giving it to, is not getting it. So it's a hypocritical love, right? Because you're saying, I did something for you that I liked, and therefore you must like it and be happy and appreciative and give me praises, right? Make sure that you honor me for this, you know. So, and when you do, you go, oh no, it's okay. But if you say nothing, you know how many times that people have been mad at me because I didn't send a thank you card? I was like, all right. I think I said from the pulpit one time years ago, and I had a big church. Listen, I'm not going to send everybody a thank you card. You got to stop this, right? If you give me $5 or something for a Christmas gift for the family or something, and there's like 400 people here, we're going to sit down and just write 400 thank you cards. I said it's hypocrisy. If you're giving and you're expecting to get in return, it's hypocrisy, right? You can't do that to a person. It's not proper. If you want to love and bless somebody, love and bless them. And like Jesus said, pray and give without anybody knowing about it, right? And then God will reward you. That's true love, right? Where you do it and don't expect something in return. And so anyway, it's a social aspect of things. But we're all products of our environment. We're all very different. And I'm not saying you shouldn't want to enjoy something with someone and even set it up, because when you first get married or you first become friends with somebody, you really don't know them well enough to hit a home run, right? And getting them a present or doing something. So you really have to do investigation, which kind of kills I like to surprise people. Well, give them a receipt with it and don't get hurt if they take it back, you know? Because you might totally miss it and you might hit a home run. You never know. But if you'll do a little investigation, clever, you know, like, oh, what's your favorite color? You're out hanging out. You're just talking about favorite animals, favorite colors, favorite stuff. And then you can devise your little secret plan and dial in, like, you know, they like this and they like that and da-da-da. And you can kind of get an 85% like success rate on whatever you're accomplishing, because you've investigated their favorite foods and favorite color and favorite style, or, and all this stuff. And so, you know, you can that's what love looks like. It's a little less fun because it takes my self-gratification and puts it as second or even nothing. And that, of course, makes people almost feel unmotivated to do something for someone. And that's foolishness and silliness, right? Love is empty of me. And so true love is the motive of love doesn't mean you loved. I see this all the time in couples. Well, I was trying to love him or I was loving her. I said, okay, that's great, but did you do it? Did you accomplish it? And I said, did you want this? No. But I did it for you. Did you want it? No. They didn't want it. So who'd you do it for? Did you ask? Did you investigate? They didn't want it. What did you want? This? Did you do that? No. Okay. You didn't accomplish love. It's that simple. It's not just, you got to throw pride out and all the silliness and all the emotions and all the how your mom trained you and how you stink and all that junk and just toss it out the window and say, I'm in God's kingdom now under Christ, and he says this is the way love looks. Because the world has said this is the way love looks. And God says, no. This is the way love looks. And it may not include any satisfaction from you whatsoever. Right? You may not get any notification or notoriety or any praise or any sharing in the good moment or anything. You may not get any of it. But look to God for your reward and he'll reward you. And that's oftentimes half the problem in any relationship. To friends, husband, wife, kids, everything. It's people trying to love based upon their concept of love as opposed to seeking to accomplish love, which is less self-gratifying, almost 100%. Until you're spiritually mature and you begin to really enjoy that. Because then it becomes an art form. How sneaky can I be? How much investigation can I do? How well can I nail this thing down, right? So that I can and sometimes you go, I still missed it. But hey, I gave it a good shot, get the receipt. And I always tell people, take it back, right? It would hurt my feelings if you didn't. If you don't like it, take it back. I was just shooting for it, I mean, I like to surprise people too. But if you try and you fail, it's just, okay, I swung and missed. In baseball, a 500 average is that's Hall of Fame. So if you hit 50% of the time, you're doing pretty good, So it's that would be just one out of a gazillion, right? Think in terms of a young couple just came up to us on 2 Sundays ago, and they were about to get married. And they're like, oh yeah, we don't, there's nervous. The guy said, yeah, I'm nervous. And the girl looked at him like, you're nervous? She was like, why are you nervous? He goes, oh, well, no, I want to get married. It's just, I've never been a husband before. And it was a very wise statement. I've never been a husband before. I don't know what I'm doing. And I was like, that is a wise statement. It's a very important self-awareness position to have. And they were like, oh, you got any little advice, saying something? I said, yeah, I'll give you some advice. It's very, very important, right? Adam and Eve did not have holidays. They did not have an anniversary. They did not care about birthdays. They didn't have in-laws. They didn't have anything, right? They woke up every day. They looked at the sun coming up. They looked at the beauty of the grass and the beauty of the flowers, and they thought, how can we enjoy today together? That's it. Satan has then made this construct and squeezed everybody into it, where if you don't, you didn't celebrate Mother's Day or my birthday, and you must know he doesn't love me, he didn't do this, and blah, 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 and you didn't buy me this, and all the commercials, you gotta love her, this is how you love her, this is what you do. And so now all of a sudden, what could be a pretty cool thing to celebrate somebody's birthday is now an obligation. If you don't do it, you're a bad person. It's like, oh no, that is jacked up. That is satanic and wicked and evil. If you want to do it, great. If you don't want to do it, fine. Because sometimes you just may be in a situation where you can't do it at a level you want to. Maybe you get injured. Maybe you're out of town. Maybe something comes up. Whatever, right? And so somebody get their feeling hurt. And dudes, by the way, get just as hurt. Dudes, they won't say it, but they do. They get their little feelings hurt. And because they're like little boys inside, and they want to, they want their mommy to fix them their favorite cake and their favorite meal on their birthday too sometimes. And, that kind of thing. And, it's the way I grew up. So, the only day you were special. So I love special days. Yeah. I mean, practically speaking, right? Well, this is a workhorse. Once a year, the workhorse gets to be petted and gets a bath. And they love you. Put some flowers around his neck. All right, go back to work. Next day, back to work. In fact, you got to clean up the birthday party. Right? You clean it up. Mow the grass so that everybody's happy when they get here, and then we celebrate you. Now clean it up. I'm joking, but no, it's still, those are silly things, and there've been years in our time where we've celebrated our kids' birthdays more grand, and sometimes almost to nothing, because I wanted to train them to understand that this is not mandatory. Right? It's not important that you get honored one day of the year. You get loved every single day of the year. You're never going to get love. It's not how somehow I love you more on this day. So it's not important that you get some big celebration. And that you were born on some day. Same with any holiday, Valentine's Day or any day. It's just a day that somebody made up to make money. I mean, restaurants benefit, the diamond people benefit. 2 days, right, that make the most money, or the three are Christmas, Valentine's Day, and Mother's Day. Mother's Day, amazingly, is one of the greatest, most lucrative days of the year for jewelers and all kinds of things. Florists, yeah, exactly. So everybody makes money, and it's there's a intelligence about it, right? It's functional. It keeps society functioning. It keeps money kind of swelling and going up and down, and that's kind of good for society. But am I going to get condemned if I don't participate for some reason? It's like no wife or husband should ever think negatively of one another because they don't value a certain day. It's like, look at the life, how much they love you daily, how much they love you. They're giving their whole life to each other, right? Somebody shouldn't be judging a single day. And people will hold that against them. That time you didn't celebrate my birthday, and they'll make sure that the next year they know it's coming up. Don't forget, like last year, we're going to make sure you make that reservation early, because last year, we stood in line for 6 hours trying to get in the restaurant, Beth and I do it easy. We just go for lunch, Nobody's in the restaurant. It's great. And then we go do something fun in the evening. It's like, I don't need to do the traditions. We just make it up as we go along. I can go the day before, the day after. I make up my own day. What does it matter? If we want to celebrate a day that's fun, we do it. But if we don't, we don't. It just doesn't matter. We're happy together. That's all that matters. So I said to her and him, don't value days that the world tells you to value. It will cause so much hurt in your marriage that literally is a fiction. It's like fantasy hurt. It's not real hurt. It's fantasy hurt. And Satan's like, ha ha ha, you're the idiot. You bought into the system. And Adam and Eve didn't have those problems because they didn't have anything to jack with them, right? They didn't have to argue about which in-laws they were going to go to on Thanksgiving, right? They didn't have in-laws. You think in terms of, when you say leave and cleave, you have to say, okay, first and foremost, we don't have in-laws, right? We have them, but we don't have them. Like we're an independent unit now. So no matter what, we're going to love each other. We're going to have a good life. And if our in-laws are upset or somebody, we're not going to be affected by that. Like a commitment to that is so important, because the way the world's set up is very, very different, right? So there are lots of social things where you could say, oh, I'm valuing something, and this is good. It's good to value love and birthdays and honoring people and whatnot. But man, the trouble and the pain and the judgment and the bitterness that is established throughout year after year based upon those things is horrendous, right? And that's
Resentment.
Yeah, resentment. Yeah, that's because the bitterness leads to resentment. Resentment leads to all kinds of nasty little things, right? So,
Especially if they're Italian.
huh?
Especially if they're
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you think of those Mexican birthdays, it's like every year, it's like 700 people show up. The kid's 2 years old. I was like, Beth, we're not throwing a party for the universe when the kid is 1 or 2 years old. They don't even know they exist on the earth, right? They're little mongrels that just want to eat stuff and break stuff, and they don't even never remember this day. They'll look at it in the pictures. Oh, that was me? What do you know? Oh, I didn't realize I had a birthday. Like, the kid doesn't care. They just want to be with mom and dad. And if we throw a birthday party, great. If we don't, great. But we're not going to, value this thing like it's, the most important thing in the world. If you have the money, it's kind of a fun social thing. I mean, if you have lots of money and you can do lots of fun social things, hey, man, that's fun. Do it. But if you're doing it and it's stressful and it's evil, it becomes evil, right? Because it becomes a context to judge and oppress and to say you're not loved, or to say that you don't care for me, or the resentment, as you're saying, that leads to bitterness, or bitterness leads to resentment that happens. So those are some of the ways that Satan's dominion has so many different options, because each culture has its own standard of what love looks like, right? Each culture, and then the cultures within the cultures, and then the families within those cultures have their own traditions, right? Timings and how-tos and all that stuff. And it's like we've been trained to make sure that we put so many occasions to be mad at each other in place that we're never going to be happy. Right?
That's true.
Huh?
Throughout the year.
What? Yeah, throughout the year. Yeah, and make sure we do it, so that it's there's enough time to recover, and then, and now we're going to do it again. Make sure, let's get mad at each other. We wouldn't have a good relationship if we didn't. So things like that. Those are funny things, but they're real, right? And sometimes you listen to someone talking, I'm like, man, this would all be easy if they just never celebrated any of this stuff and just woke up every day and said, man, I'm so grateful I found a wonderful, beautiful woman. I'm so grateful I found a lovely man who cares for me. And you just don't care about the rest of it. All of a sudden, guess what? All the storm goes away, right? It all goes away because you don't care about anything. Just happiness and joy and peace in your home, right? It's so sweet. And then if you can start by saying, I don't care about anything except my friendship with this person, or the happiness between these two people, or my relationship with my wife or my kids. If I care about that, and I care about love being in the home, being truly from God, God's love, then I'm going to have a really good life, a consistent life. And then if I can cautiously add birthdays, right? Very cautiously add birthdays in, and do it in such a way that it's not hypocritical, and that it's a blessing, and it doesn't give occasion for judgment or overworking people or overextending people monetarily or emotionally or time-wise. Then I can add that in very gently and very carefully, right? I don't want my wife to be overstressed out. I don't want my kids to be overstressed. I don't want to be overstressed out or overextended in any way, because that's not what God would want of me. He would want it to be a blessing, which means it's probably going to be not as grand, because unless you just are, very, very wealthy. You can just hire staff to come in and do everything for you. And most people aren't that wealthy. And so, therefore, it just puts a lot of work on you, right? And so you have to think in terms of, I value peace and joy and happiness in my life and in my home and with my relationships. And if that is the upfront, because this is, the kingdom of heaven is not about eating and drinking, Romans 14, but about righteousness, joy, and peace, right? So if that's the kingdom of heaven on earth for me, righteousness, joy, and peace, then that should be what I'm aiming for as the standard of the everyday of my life, right? The trials come in, you have a little bit of whatever, but if you know the Word of God and you're working it out, that peace is going to line up and it's going to be reestablished. So righteousness, joy, and peace is the standard sort of, foundation of consistency. And it's when I start letting the dominion of Satan's previous training into my life, or people tell me, have you ever heard this? He didn't do that for you? He did what? All of a sudden you're like, he didn't do that for me. How'd your birthday? What'd he do for you? Well, I didn't do that. He didn't. All of a sudden, like, was he supposed to? I guess he didn't. Well, he didn't. And all of a sudden now I'm angry. How am I angry? I don't know. Somebody said I should be angry. Because now I had an expectation. Oh, okay, then you get home. What's wrong? Nothing. Well, if you don't tell me, I can't know. Exactly, you should know.
What did I do? It's what you didn't do.
Yeah, there you go. What did I do? It's what you didn't do. I'm not a mind reader. Exactly. Hold on a second. How did we get here? We had a good morning. We said goodbye. And we kissed. We had a nice time. Talked on the phone throughout the day. Something happened. Right. The dominion of Satan has entered in somehow. And it's not just that it can happen from the woman's side. It can happen from the man's side. Right? Both are, I'm very experienced for myself and my wife. Both us growing through that, as well as being a counselor to many people having to go through that. So it's equal on both sides. And it's funny though, because you have to go, hold on a second. Is this legitimate, or am I just bewitched by my previous training? You go, I need to seek the Word of God out here and figure this out, And that's why I was to the congregation, it was, everybody's in. I had people come up to me, did you write such and such back and give them a thank you note? I'm like, no. I'm like, oh, well, you should probably do that. I was like, all right. It's getting to the point where now people are gossiping and stuff because somebody gives you $20. You have to go through this whole litany of stuff. And that's sweet. I'm very grateful for kindness. I'm not grateful for kindness that comes with now some sort of unspoken obligation to praise them, for the kindness. It's somebody gives unto the Lord, then they're not looking for me to do it, right?
Yeah.
Usually I do it personally, oh, hey, thank you for that gift or something or whatever.
Yeah.
If I can even remember, because I'm usually swirled around like I'm in an eddy all the time, But you want to. You're always grateful in the moment, But especially as you have more and more people, it's literally impossible to say thank you to everybody in a way that you would feel would be satisfactory and not almost awkward. So anyway, there are things like that. Does that help a little bit, or did I miss the mark on that answering the question? I tried to throw out some.
Could you give some more examples? No.
There's a lot, Let's see, what other is there another context that you would like to hear an example in? Because I got plenty, believe me. I got years and years and years of examples.
Something that I wonder sometimes if, say, one of the kids makes jokes, Ellie or Kai make a joke, and then I don't really laugh at it. Though I get the joke, and I'm just like, it just doesn't find the laugh, and they're laughing really hard, and then they're like, why aren't you laughing? I don't know, I just didn't find it that funny. I get the joke, I just don't find it funny. And they're like,
right.
It's supposed to be funny.
Right.
And they get mad at you.
Yeah, they're like, it's supposed to be a joke, it's supposed to be funny. What are you so serious for? I'm like,
yeah, how am I an enemy now? Because I simply didn't laugh at your joke. That's a perfect illustration. Yeah. It's because everybody's different, that's why, And some people, are bent toward that way of theatrics or that mindset of humor, and some people are not. And again, if I'm telling it to get self-gratification out of the moment, then I'm not really. If a joke is intended to bring some levity, right? Laughter is medicine for the soul, as the word Proverbs talk about. So laughter is good. It's good to bring it into your life. It's good to have friends that can bring it into your life. But if somebody does and they miss it, it's like, oh well, the person that brings it in there can't say, well, you didn't, you didn't accept my humor to bring you levity. You know, it's like, how did I become a bad guy? Because you told me a joke, you know. The perfect illustration. Again, it's like, good night, you know. So it's things like that where it's like, it's just over-judging a situation because of the culture. Has nothing to do with truth, nothing to do with the kingdom of God, nothing to do with reality. It has to do with just the way I feel as someone who is gratifying myself by really, in a way, it's like the little kid who says, Mom, I want to do something for you, and they do a dance, and then they say, Did you like it? Did you like it? How was it? In other words, the kid's gratifying themselves more than they're gratifying the parent, right? And kids will be patronized. Oh, honey, that was sweet. That's lovely, whatever. And it seems innocent, but what you're doing is you're perverting the kid, right? Because I didn't do that to my kids. I would say, honey, you can dance, but it's more for you than for me, right? Because if you're dancing, I can't ballet dance. I can't relate to it. But I can appreciate how much you love it. I can appreciate how well you're doing. And then the kid's mind would shift and go, oh, they're loving me by entertaining or watching me do something I love. Yes, I can do that. But don't expect me to relate to it or appreciate it at the level that you do. I'm not a ballet dancer, right? And so I can't relate to it. You could be disappointed forever and it's not going to change the reality, right? How many women want to go out and talk football with their husband or talk about the engine he's rebuilding, and he's like, oh, that's good. And then I tighten this, and we put a 450 on there, 4 barrel, and it's got a, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, of course, if love is just entertaining them by letting them speak and saying, I'm so happy for you. It's, again, Romans 12. Romans 12 is like one of the people think of 1 Corinthians 13 as the love passage, but Romans 12 is the better one because it speaks to some of the most profound truths about love. Romans 12, 9 through the end.
Romans
And it
12,
says,
I'm sorry.
9 through the end, where it starts with love without hypocrisy.
Thank you.
Hate what is evil, cling to what is good, and it keeps on going from there. But it throws out these lovely passages, and one of them is, rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. Right? So let's take that one and make it practical. Somebody buys something you thought it was stupid for them to buy. Because you think that they should have different priorities at their age, or maybe they're being irresponsible with their money, or maybe it's just dumb, right? Maybe they should have got something more expensive because that thing's going to wear out. Or maybe they should have got something less expensive because that's just overly exorbitant. So what do we tend to do? We tend to be like, oh, no, that's good. Whatever, as opposed to, what? We tend to communicate. We'll give a little patronization, but we're going to let them know that, we kind of, well, what is it? Oh, just wondering if, you just talked about last month that you didn't really have the money for such and such, and now you're buying this. I was just wondering, We got these little ways of showing our we'll disapprove with approval somehow, and it's like this weird thing, as opposed to saying, "I'm happy for you." As a minister, I watch people do things all the time, and then they'll come to me. What do you think I should do? And and I'll give them there's 5 to 10 options. I'll give you the top 5, and if you do this, this is the outcomes. Here's 5 outcomes to the outcome, and here's option 2, and here's 5 outcomes. Potential implications, and here's option 3, option 4, option 5. The person they'll say, I want to do option 1, but then they'll do option 3. Because they're afraid, because they don't want to spend that much money, because it takes too much time, whatever, but they really want 1. And over and over and over through the years, what I see them do is they'll do option 3 or 4, say, and then they'll I should have done option 1. Because they're not happy, and then they get rid of option 4, and then they go to option 2. They'll skip 3. I'll get closer to okay, still this is 2. Don't want to do this or whatever because it's blah blah blah. And then they go, I still should have done option 1, and eventually do option 1. In the meantime, they're losing money each exchange, right? And when they should have just went for whatever it was they wanted in the first place, and not been afraid or are concerned about certain things if it fit within the logic of their means. And over and over, and they'll be like, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me? I'm like, What do you mean, why didn't I tell you? I'm not God in your life. I mean, it's like, I told you the 5 options, and you told me what you wanted to do. And you said, they would say, what do you think I should do? I said, what do you want to do? This? Okay, well, do what you would like to do. And they'll go, oh, but I got da 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 da. I'm like, okay, well, don't do that. Well, no, I want to do that. Okay, we'll do that. Like, what do you mean? Well, what should I do? I'm not telling you what you should do, because then I'm culpable and responsible for your decisions. I have no idea what you should do. Even if I have an opinion, it's utterly irrelevant. I cannot share it with you. You have to make that decision before the Lord. It's your life, your faith, right? I don't make decisions for people like that. If they make it, I then rejoice with those who rejoice over that decision. I will rejoice with somebody over the decision they make to buy option 4. And then I'll weep with them when they sell it to buy option 2. And I will simultaneously rejoice with them again and then weep with them later as they buy option 1. Right? And I will not say, well, I told you so. I'll just simply say, I'm happy for you. That's a bummer, yeah, that you lost this or that or time or money in the transaction. But I always say this. The money you lose in gaining wisdom is like paying for your education. And it's worth it. It's worth every dime. And what people want me to do is to tell them where they're going to end up, which usually I can kind of predict it a lot of times, and that's why. Because you can kind of see when somebody tells you what they want, that's kind of where they're going, even if they don't go there. They're going to end up going there a large percentage of the time, unless they mature out of that and they alter a little bit. But they tend to go where they want to go, inevitably. And they'll be like, well, why didn't you, whatever? Like, because obviously God allowed you to make that decision, knowing that wasn't a decision, so you could grow and mature. So you could learn whatever perspective that you needed to learn to change and grow and develop. And that loss is not a loss at all. 30 grand is not much to pay for the wisdom you just gained. Right? That's precious. 30 grand is nothing. God can repay that. That's nothing. But the wisdom you gain, right? That will never leave you. You'll have that for the rest of your life. And if I would have just said to you, oh, you should definitely do number 1, and really compel the person to do it, you'd be questioning it all the time. I really wonder if I would have been happy with number 4. I really wonder. A little disgruntledness that, I pushed them into it because of the cost or the time or the whatever, right? And that's the way it works, right? But if I back off, as I should, as Romans 14 says, each man stands and falls before the Lord, and God is able to make them stand. The Lord is able to make them stand. If they make the decisions, then they're happy with the end result. If I make the decision for them because they want me, they're begging me to, they're going to resent me because they won't be sure ever if it was the one that they would have kept or made in the end. And so I can get in the way. So I have to stay out of the way. You don't see this in pastors a lot. They tend to be overly controlling. They tend to impress upon people and try to tell them what they want to do. I tend to back off. Now, I will give somebody depth of understanding of decision making. Like, I can take you deep into the implications, monetarily, time-wise, scientific aspects of things, social aspects of things, monetary impacts. Bye, guys. Have a great dinner. God bless you. Have a great trip home tomorrow. Yes. It was great meeting you. They're going to go out for dinner. Enjoy some time together. And but I can take somebody deep into that, but I will not manipulate them into a decision. Right? They have to make their own decisions. Because ultimately they have to live with that decision. And if they're not confident that they made it, then something, God puts a trial in their path or whatever, they're going to be looking for somebody to blame, and it'll fall on you. So, as a person, you got to be careful not to overly impress someone toward a direction, even if you know that it can be negative. And even if in the back of your mind, you're going to be like, well, I told you so,
I told them so.
Yeah. But in your heart and in the way you're expressing yourself, you're saying, oh, I'm bummed for you, but I'm happy that you gained the wisdom and that now you have a clear perspective on what direction you think you ought to go in whatever the context is. And so, rejoicing with those who rejoice without showing disapproval. Weeping with those who weep without saying, I told you so. Right? Just weeping those who weep and comforting them. Even if they know and you both know that you told them so. I'm not going to hold that over their head. Yeah, that I know, that we both know that I told you. But just learning to love in the way that Christ loves, right? And value the things that Christ values. That's that shift from the dominion of darkness that looks good, but is tainted because of the hypocrisy part or the self gratification part of it. And saying, I told you so, doesn't help the person. It just helps me feel good about me, right? And pointing out that there's some disapproval in someone's decision doesn't help the person. It just makes me feel like, I did something. It doesn't really help them. And so it's coming and tweaking your life. And sometimes it's just a little tweak, a little bit. You can keep 90% of what's going on and just settle down the mindset behind it or maybe the extent of things. And then it becomes lovely. It becomes a blessing. It becomes a fantastic bond-building experience or occasion or gift or moment of comfort or patriotism or something like that. But it has to be adjusted and become spiritual as opposed to just be based upon a civility. Civility, when you think in terms of Emily Post, right? You think, like, what created Emily Postism, right? The sort of English version of etiquette. What happened was, God in His grace were giving people the wisdom to ask themselves, what makes life happy between two people, right? What makes life happy between two people? When you eat.
When you what?
Eat.
Eat.
Okay. First, let's see. Let me just sit across from somebody and eat. They're opening their mouth and chewing and food's blowing up. Not a good look. Let's write that down. Chew with your mouth closed. Right?
Let's do that.
That's better. What about posture? You want to be like, on the table, or do we set up and show good posture, right? When we're sitting at the table, so that it's a beautiful thing, the posture of a human being, right? When you see somebody slumpy, it's instantly you're like, oh, they would look so much better if they would stand up straight, right? So you're like, oh yeah, if somebody's looking at me, they're going to be much happier just by the visage if my posture's nice. Let's write that down. Have good posture, right? So what you had was the original concept of etiquette was the accomplishment of love, right? It's a beautiful thing. It's fantastic. How to dance, where you put your hand, right? How to communicate in dance. Pull here in the back muscle of the woman so she knows you're going this way. You push on the hip, you're going that way. You want to spin. You're communicating. So everything is with the hand and the fingers. And so she knows one hand's here and her hand's there. And so it creates this context where you can move and flow and communicate, right? And this is the best way to do that. Write that down, right? So it's etiquette in dancing. There's etiquette here. There's etiquette there. And it was originally designed so that two people have the best time together. What's Satan do with it? Sit up straight. You look like a doggone buffoon, right? In other words, it became a twist to judge people as opposed to a context to explain how to hold myself accountable even if someone isn't. I don't require someone else to have great etiquette if I have great etiquette, because the point of etiquette is to be a blessing to the person I'm with, not so as to condemn them for not giving it back. right? It becomes hypocritical when I demand it back, right? So taking etiquette per se, and the same thing. Like etiquette was a gift of God to humanity because it's really the expression of what Tiger says is dignity. Are you laughing at something?
Just remember something my daughter said once about manners.
What was
And that's okay.
okay, that's a private thing. Okay, but it's a beautiful thing, right? And there's etiquette in the bedroom. There's etiquette in dancing. There's etiquette at the table. There's etiquette in public. There's etiquette in private. There's etiquette all over the place. And in your own home, you can design and tweak and take wisdom from all kinds of sources in order to dial in your own personal etiquette between you and your wife and your husband and your children and your closest friends and family. And you can create a hospitable environment due to that study, as long as etiquette will never be your friend if it's what you're looking to impose upon the people coming into your life. Right? If you're just using etiquette to be hospitable and a blessing, you'll love etiquette. It's fantastic. In fact, it's the sweetness of life because it's dignity. Dignity, by definition, is the opposite of an animal, right? Dignity is when you're most like God and the opposite of feral, right? Because we're kind of feral creatures. And we come into the world just eating and give me, and tear stuff up and whatever. And you have to be trained into being civil. But there's being civil, and then there's being dignified, which is a whole step up from that, right? And dignity is when you're mastering how to love the people around you in civility. And that is beautiful.
And I just crossed my eyes.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about
You know, you're in civilization, and there's those who stick out as charming and lovely, and the way they move, the way they speak, the way they address things, the way they encourage, the way they withhold, the way they give in.
Julie Andrews and Audrey Hepburn's.
Audrey Hepburn, yeah, she had a charm, but then she, depends on which movie you're looking at, right?
True,
Yeah.
that's true. I mean, her interviews
But,
and that,
yeah.
which was always very charming.
Yeah, very charming. And you can see it in some people just have it, some people don't quite so much, because they valued being that way toward others rather than, I'm not going to be that way if they're not going to be that way. It's like, okay, well, I want to be like God, my Father. I'm in His household, I'm in Christ's kingdom, and my goal is to imitate Him as a beloved child, as Ephesians 5:1 says, the same book. And therefore, it's not a requirement that other people have the dignity or civility or the honorable disposition toward me for me to have it toward them. And so that's the difference between being in God's household and being in the world, where our world expects it to be repaid, as opposed to giving just to love. You have to give without the thought of ever being repaid. And sometimes the payment isn't. I didn't want repayment. Did you want a thank you? Yeah. Then you wanted a repayment. I didn't care if they were, I didn't want them to be as dignified as me. Did you want them to eat with their mouth closed? Yeah. Okay. Then you wanted dignity back. In other words, yes, you do, because you're upset. If you're happy with yourself, then nobody can take that away. Nobody can make you unhappy. Those are choices you make, right? And you have to go, I didn't like the way they did this. I didn't like the way they did that. Okay, so what? Is it a requirement that they be different for me to be able to love them? No, it's not. And that's when you'll really find that you're the happiest in life, when you're just happy with yourself and how you carry yourself and how you present yourself, and you dial in your love, and you don't have any requirements, and you'll experience the height of happiness much, much greater than you would on the payment system. We talk about all the time, the payment system. If you subtly see it, it's everywhere. Our society is loaded with the payment system. They want to be paid back in some way or another. And sometimes you do that just because you want to love somebody, and you have to kind of like, in order until they grow or mature, or maybe it's a business situation, it's just shrewd, then you can play the game, and you can give them that little love back, and you can kind of laugh under your breath, knowing, that it was a whole hypocritical thing, but it is what it is, and I'm going to love them anyway, right? I don't require people to know that it's a hypocritical love. Right? They can love me and whatnot, but there's a point where, okay, if it's gotten out of hand, I can make a stand and they can adjust or not adjust, and I can either lose the friendship or not. I don't really care. At that point, by choice, I care, but sometimes you have to choose not to care in order to be at peace in life and be happy, Yeah, and so you just kind of rock and roll on. And we all want people to love us and be happy with us, and we want to be happy with others, but it's not always going to be the case, right?
Without expectation.
Yeah, exactly. So we went off on the practical tonight, but I hope that was helpful to think a little bit. It keeps going, right? It keeps going. Practical implications of all these things. We could hit hundreds, if you will, of categories or little rooms of discussion on that, but you'll have a much more satisfied life if you dial that in. All right. Well, our time is up. So, Kara, would you close us in prayer?
Sure.